Aloha, everyone. We welcome to you all to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. This is Tuafale coming all the way from South Central Texas. We're excited to be here. Mr. Atearoa will be joining us shortly. Before we go into the main topic of the live digital kava session tonight, we're going to go through a couple other videos as we get ready for the main part of the program where Mr. Atearoa will join us. We have a couple early comments as usual. Our PR representative, Water Bear, says Michelle Obama's real name is Mike. Siana, Water Bears, Maria Vaini. He also says the lost tribes of Israel are on the other side of the ice wall. Game of Thrones reference there. Appreciate it, Mr. Water Bears. Hopefully all is well in California. So what we're going to do to begin our program today is we're initially going to talk about the Pulemelei Mound in Samoa, and that's going to be like a prime for the pump here. Our main meat of the program when Mr. Atearoa joins us is we're going to discuss some of our social media comments and so forth that we've been getting. And we're going to walk through it. I think it was very interesting to see how people are interpreting the relationship of Samoa and Tonga, the Tui Tonga, the Tui Hatakalaua, and the Tui Kanukupolu, and the average Tongan citizen. Once again, really want to reiterate that we take the position that there was a Polynesian nation, and that the Tui Tonga was the head of the Polynesian nation, and that this empire or nation was centered around Tonga Tapu, and that is where the seat of power was. So let's start with, I found a video online that kind of gives a summary of the Pulemelei Mound. Before that, actually, let's look at another video first real quick. And this one is a more recent video, and it's some people giving some discussions and description on the Pulemelei Mound itself. Let's bring that here to the stage, listen in real quick, and then give some reaction. Make sure we got our sound.
The mound is nested within inside Letolo plantation or Palauli plantation, and it spans 1,100 acres. So just for some scale and relativity is that I believe Central Park is sitting just over 850 acres. So that means that this plantation is 300-400 acres bigger. So it's pretty small. And back in the 1970s, there was an archaeological survey which unearthed almost 3,000 different findings. And one of those findings, if anything, the most significant of those findings is the Pulemelei Mound that you see here. So the Pulemelei Mound sits at 65 meters wide by 60 meters wide and also 12 meters high. Its function and its role within society is still quite indefinitive. But some of these, particularly from a village perspective, was that this was the residence of a high chief, Lilo Mayava. But it was also a place for ceremonies, rituals, but also elite sports. So Pulemelei, across these 1,100 acres, sits right on top of the survey. But I'm really interested in understanding the living system as in its entirety. So the archaeologists have also identified other significant mounds within the site. I believe it was 4 or 5 others. And they're splitting up into different Pito or different wards. And each of those Pito or wards had their own systems inside them. As I had mentioned.
So it's a pretty interesting site in Samoa, the Pulemelei Mound. It's pretty extensive. It's a large structure. And there's a lot of interesting things to discuss there. Depending on how you perceive this, on this show, we're really into understanding ruins and understand that ruins play a very important part in helping us navigate oral history. Why is this important? It's important because oral history can be contradicted within itself, within the same people, within the same family, and many times even within the same individual. So, though we understand the value of oral history and the right oral history makes a big difference, the source, the access an individual has to information is important as to the validity of an oral history, and that's something that plays a critical part in validating. Just because there's a story that's been told for hundreds of years doesn't necessarily mean it's an accurate story. Where that story originates, how it has been consistent, and how it's tied to ruins, and ideally with scientific knowledge as well. So we've seen a lot of posts online expressing the Pulemelei Mound, and just like here, it's highlighted here, largest and most ancient structure in Polynesia, right? Now, I think there's some interesting things is how do we define ancient structure? If we are going to say that the Pulemelei Mound is the most ancient structure in Polynesia, I would like to understand what that definition means. Is it man-made structure? If that is the case, then I would say that the Fonuatanu in Mua, in La Paja specifically, the man-made reclaimed land from the ocean, from the lagoon, in Tonga, specifically on Tonga Tapu, that would probably be the largest man-made structure in Polynesia. Why do I say that? And what is the Fonuatanu? The Fonuatanu is approximately 100 acres of man-made land extended from the shoreline into the lagoon as a major part of the Tu'iha settlement. So basically, in summary, when the Tu'itonga installed the Tu'iha, and it's very important that we understand that it is not a situation where the Tu'iha by force removed power from the Tu'itonga. It was a peaceful, and it was driven by the Tu'itonga to create the Tu'iha. Many people out there, even the quote-unquote historians, academics, take the position that the Tu'itonga lost power by force to the Tu'iha, and they take the same position with the Tu'ikanukupolu and say power was removed from them forcefully. That is not the case. And it's very evident throughout oral history, also through the archaeological evidence, that this was not a violent takeover or revolt or revolution on the Tu'itonga. So the reason why I wanted to talk about the Pulemelei Mound is this is a prime example of quote-unquote evidence that's shared with us consistently on social media. See, Ha'amoa has the evidence to be the center of the Polynesian Empire, that it is the cradle or origin of the Polynesian civilization and empire. But there are a lot of questions that are hanging out there. Like, for example, they mention in the video that we just saw here that they don't know what it was for. Okay, they assume it was for a high chief. Another video that we're going to look at here is going to kind of walk through some academics' ideas of what it was. We even have other people who make certain claims that, you know, the Pulemelei Mound is 3,000 years old, right? And they found human activity where the Pulemelei Mound is and say 3,000 years old. See, Ha'amoa is the cradle of civilization. There's one big thing that everybody needs to understand. Human activity versus the actual construction of the Pulemelei Mound are two separate things, right? Here's a prime example. The Nukuleka village in Tonga Tapu has a Tu'itonga settlement there, okay? There were two Tu'itongas that resided there. After they left Ha'amonga, they went to Nukuleka. That settlement is widely accepted as the oldest settlement in Polynesia. Okay, and in certain cases, there is a scientific basis to believe that was a founding colony, and we've gone through the scientific papers and studies that say Nukuleka was a founding Polynesian settlement, and they have scientific backing for it. It is not just the age of the settlement, which is considered the oldest, with the Lapita pottery that's there. There are unique types of pottery that are there that are uniquely Tongan in design and in development, that are older than many, if not all, the Lapita settlements that are found in Ha'amoa. It would be foolish for anyone to say, we found a 3,000 plus settlement and human activity at that Tu'itonga settlement, and say that Tu'itonga settlement was 3,000 years old. We know that not to be the case. It just so happens that the Tu'itonga settlement there, and the Langi built there, where the Tu'itonga that resided there was eventually buried, was in an ancient location of early settlers of the island. Okay? That needs to be distinguished and separated from human activity in the area of the Pulemelei Mound. And like in that video where it's hundreds to 1,000 or so acres, you can't just find some human activity over those hundreds to 1,000 acres and say, oh, it's all tied to the Pulemelei. That would be very foolish to do so. So that's one of the things that we need to distinguish. And we get all these tags online where they're tagging the Polynesianized podcast. See, Pulemelei Mound is 3,000 years old. We've gone through studies on this podcast, right? Yes, there's human activity around. The structure itself, okay, especially the main structure, it's been expanded and grown multiple times. But the structure itself and the building that was erected on top of the structure is during Tu'itonga timelines. There, and we even discuss here that there is a high probability that the Pulemelei Mound was built by the Tu'itonga for the Tu'itonga. And a key area where this oral history that's well accepted is when Kaulfo Nuafekay installs the Tu'ihatakalaua on Tonga Tapu, and he goes to Samoa, and in Ha'amoa, the Tu'itonga resides there for 3 to 5 generations, just over 200 years before the Tu'itonga Tapu Osi returns the Tu'itonga to Tonga Tapu, and then builds the Paepae Telea over there, right? And so that's something that I think is really important for those who are looking to explore that information. Please be mindful that just any random human activity near the location does not necessitate the age of the mound itself, and that there is actually pretty significant history that the Tu'itonga built the Pulemelei Mound. Now, you may argue with that, you may disagree with that, but that is the reality that we face. Mr.
Hey,
Atearoa,
what's up? What's up? What's up, everyone? It's good to be here. Sorry for the delay. Tua, just a little exercising and moving things here at my place here with my in-laws, just helping them out. So, good to be here.
All right, awesome. We're just kind of, wanted to walk through. Today, we're spending a good bit of time discussing some of the concepts, discussion online. And we'll get to it. There's one little bit further down the road. But right now, we're just doing a general discussion. There's been a lot of activity about the Pulemelei Mound, a topic we have dove into many times, right? So, couple comments here real quick. Tease, Malo. He says, Malo e taulava. Welcome, Tease.
Malo.
Shit, Water Bears. See it here, Masi. Water Bear says, que holo, Masi. Maria, looking
Water
good.
Bear, that's one thing I'm trying to do, Gi Holo. Just trying to be a little bit more healthier so I can Paepae family ho.
Marie. She, water
Mahalo,
bears,
water
you're
bear.
making me self-conscious. Maybe I'm not.
Eh,
Hey, comment, a compliment. Water bears only when Mr. Atearoa joins. Then the compliments come. Maria Masi, good job.
Mahalo,
Looks like the viewers recognize your hard work.
mahalo,
Mahalo.
mahalo.
So in the video we just watched real quick, Masi, they were talking about the Pulemelei as the largest ancient Polynesian structure
Interesting.
in Polynesia, which it's very large, right? It's very
Yeah,
tall,
it's a
it's
huge
very
compound.
large.
Yeah.
Um, so that's an interesting position. One of the things that I kind of brought up is how do we define largest? Let me just share real quick. Let's bring this up real quick, Masi. Let me read what the description is. Pulemelei Pyramid Mound of Samoa, largest and most ancient structure in Polynesia. Okay.
Interesting.
Yes. And this is, I just covered it. I'll kind of revisit it real quick. I would like to understand the definition of largest structure, first off.
Yeah.
And the second part is the most ancient. Remember when we looked at that one study, they found human activity near the structure that was thousands of years old. But they also noted that that is like way older and before the main part of the Pulemelei was built.
Yeah.
And so what people are kind of making the false assumption, in my opinion, is, oh, the Pulemelei Mound is thousands of years old because they found ancient human activity. And the example I give is Nukuleka, where that is the documented as the oldest
Yes,
Polynesian
human.
civilization,
Yes, the
right?
settlement. Yeah.
And there's also a Tonga settlement in that area as well. And it would be
Yes.
the equivalent of me saying, look, the Tuitonga structures there are thousands of years old, right? Like BC, 2000, 3000 BC, when in reality, that is just a Lapita pottery era settlement or very early and not directly tied as the same settlement as the Tuitonga settlement in Nukuleka. So that's the first thing when I hear the oldest. The second one is when we describe oldest structure, right? What does that mean? Does that just mean man-made structure? Then I would say, typically we usually point to the kind of the most recognized structures, the Ha'amonga, right?
Yeah.
As the largest structure. But I would say if we're talking about human man-made structure in Polynesia, I don't know how you beat the Fonuatanu of 100 acres or so of man-made land. That's a human man-made structure, right? That is a foundation man-made structure. I would make that argument. Obviously, that depend on the individual and what they're defining structure as. But any kind of comments on that content so far, Masi?
Yeah. I missed the video, but were there any discussions on the potential? It was a Tuitonga, let's just say a temporary settlement that it would
No,
stay there. No. Oh, see. Okay.
no.
So
The only thing they
yeah.
brought up is it was, a lot of activity around the 1300s, which would be Tuitonga timeline,
Are they
right?
talking to the local? Yeah, I'm just saying because the locals we heard to right from that casual kind of person that was
Interview.
kind of walking around interviewing the people. I think they interviewed like 3 or 4 or 5 individuals, and 3
Yes.
of them specifically said it was a Tongan influence place where the Tongans would settle.
Yes, and I tried
Right?
to find that video, but I could only find the ones where it's Samoan.
Mm.
But since you're here, right? Since you are here, we can listen to it. It wasn't this one. Let me see if I can.
Yeah,
Let
because I
me see if
remember
I
us
can
going through it.
find.
Yeah,
Yes,
going through it, and like
it's
two of the ladies, especially one specific one, she said that it was a place from what her ancestors told her
it's
when she
this
was young.
one.
Yeah, it was a settlement for a very high-ranking Tongan settlement of Tongans. So, yeah, so Yes, that's the video.
Yeah.
So
Let me
I think
play. I think it's not this lady, but the next one. But
yes. Okay.
you can do the translation for us, Masi, since you can
Yeah.
do that for us.
Ole hinga salaon na mato mai ini mato filter. Ang kamatsaga le tanga tsale na mai mato ini mai no mele sa pato.
Mm.
Ele tini falu mo na ini wa le pe ko le falu.
Mm.
Ole upuana
Let me
sa
stop right there so I can just kind of fill in. So this is what she said. She seems like to be a young person that's grown up in this area. She said she
Yeah.
was brought here.
Her
She was
village is
brought
right
here.
there next to it.
Yes, she was brought here, and this is what she's saying. She was brought here, and it was known as Tapa Tonga. It's almost like Tonga, kind of like a Tongan gated area, and that's what the Samoans refer. And that's what she referred to it when they were growing up, and what her elders told her when they brought her there was this was like a Pa Tonga area, which is like a Tonga, kind of gated Tongan area.
Yeah.
And then she's saying this Pulemelei term, she said this must be new because I never heard of it ever
This
my growing up,
this is the thing we're
right?
talking about. You have these academics and this new, it's like when people try to rewrite the history of America, they
Mm,
create new terms, they create new
mm,
things, and they're trying to make a name for themselves and they change it. Like she's like, I've never heard of this term, and yet that's in her village.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, and that's the new term that's being shared with everyone
Everyone.
outside of the village, right?
Yeah.
So everyone thinks that that's the proper term, and then like what she's saying, and then she's hearing this Pulemelei, she's like, then she's kind of we're rubbing her chin, she's like,
Yeah. She's like,
this is a new term I've heard. It must be new because I've never heard of it. I've always heard of
yeah,
the patonga, you know?
exactly. It's just like there was another video that was put online, and this is why I thought that we needed to kind of walk through some of this social media because this is being pushed online. Pulemelei, Pulemelei.
Mm,
Well, that's one side of the story. The other side of the story, local oral history, is this is a Patonga.
mm,
This is a Tongan settlement,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think she says later on that, and we'll play it a little bit more, but I think she, if I remember correctly, she mentions Tuitonga in
Mm,
there.
mm,
But we'll play it a little bit. But this is the kind of stuff we're talking about, right? You
mm.
have these academics. Let's play the other video real quick, Masi.
Okay,
It's going to
let's go
be a
for it.
rerun, but it's a short one. But I think it's
Let's do it.
good for you to kind of have it as context for our discussion here.
The Pulemelei Mound is listed within inside Letolo Plantation or Palauli Plantation, and it spans 1,100 acres. So just for some scale and relativity is that I believe Central Park is sitting just over 850 acres. So that means that this plantation is 400 acres bigger. So it's pretty small. And back in the 1970s, there was an archaeological survey which unearthed almost 3,000 different findings. And one of those findings, if anything, the most significant of those findings is the Pulemelei Mound that you see here. So the Pulemelei Mound sits at 65 meters wide by 60 meters wide and also 12 meters high. Its function and its role within society is still quite indefinitive. But some of these,
Mm,
from village perspective, was that this was the residence of a high chief, nearly Alilo Mayava, but it was also a place.
Who is that? Alilo Mayava. Is that a high chief from? Yeah.
maybe in the area, but I don't know. Because the only high chief I know from what we kind of covered a while ago is the Tuitonga high chief. you know, and No, and that's the thing. And I was just thinking to it because I was like, man, I can help you answer that. That settlement was the living area. It was just like a little langi, but just transferred somewhere else from Tonga Tapu to Savai, Haamoa.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. And that was the compound of the Tuitonga where he lived and probably where he also gave instructions and orders to his followers in Sawai. That's my understanding because I find it interesting. They've been digging it
Yeah.
since 1970
And,
and still indefinitive of what's its purpose.
and so not only in 1970, but making up names for it, right?
You know how
So
it is, Tua. When you're the
yeah,
local person, it's your oral story don't matter. It's what the people who have influence from the university say, and then if they agree with
exactly.
you, they'll promote it. If they don't, they'll promote somebody else.
And I think this is important, and we have some comments here we'll get to, but I want to make this statement before we go back to the video or go to the comments, then the video.
Mm.
We had a comment about someone, and we responded to it online, where they were kind of commenting on Tevita Fale's point of Lapita people, and how say, oh, Mr. Tevita Fale is just focused, is caught on the name of the word, right? The
Mm.
name of the thing, but call it whatever you want to call it. Here's a prime example of this Pulemelei and the Tonga, right? Tevita Fale's problem is not necessarily the word itself, though he uses that as an example, but the fact that they use Lapita to say that is the people that originate the Polynesian civilization and people is a slap in the face to the Polynesians, because the word Lapita doesn't exist amongst Polynesians, right? And if they went to the Polynesians and asked them, where do you come from? Where do you originate from? They would never say Lapita. They would say, what's the Vaihi? That's what they would say.
Yes.
So the point that Tevita Fale is trying to make is the name shows a total disregard to oral history and what the Polynesians say. It's like the Pulemelei Mound. The naming it of Pulemelei, at least from that Samoan sister's perspective, is total disregard to the oral history of the people who live in that area. It's kind of a slap. That's why she's like, I don't know, she's not saying BS, but she's kind of saying BS by saying, never heard of that name before.
Yeah. No, and she's like this. She's like exactly going. She's like, "Fo if I longo they go fo there." Meaning, it's like a Tongan going like this. Man, me fo if I longo you know. That's what she's saying. That's what she's saying, and then
Yes.
she's just going on explaining her thoughts and what she knows.
So yeah, here's a few of the comments. This is like what a bear is saying. What she's saying is, me apulushiki mo.
Only V town it
Only V-Town can come up with that, right?
straight up.
Yes. So here's another one from Tease. They love to use oral history rather than facts. So better source for oral history than the village located right at the site. Exactly. Right? And this is going along with that Tease. This is what Tevita Fale's other point is. You hear all these different oral histories, right? About Polynesia, the Polynesian Empire, the Polynesian nation, whatever you want to call it. But then you ignore the oral history that comes from the center of the Polynesian Empire in Mu'a, where the Tu'itonga's longest civilization residence was on Tonga Tapu. Right? That's the same as this whole situation that we're talking about. Another comment, you want to read this from our brother Henry. Malo Henry.
Malo Henry, my good friend, Tu'ula Moa, has his theory of the Great Tongan Megalith rock statue that stretches as far as Rapa Nui, Easter Island, or as far north to Ireland. Okay, Henry.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Malo, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting things of the ahu, the Tonga ahu. There's a specific ahu there. There's a cave of Kaitangata that a lot of people say could be tied to Tonga. Very interesting there. The other interesting thing is, and I think you mentioned this, and it's kind of related to the Pulemelei. The only major structures that we are aware of of large stone, right? Carvings of large stone, like found on Easter Island, even though the majority of the ahus are just stacked stones, like
Yeah.
at the Pulemelei. But there is one, the Tonga, the one that's named the Tongan ahu, has large pieces of stones like the langis, and it
Mm.
also has that name. So
Mm.
very interesting
Yeah, that's
in
interesting.
there. Another comment. This person looks familiar. Masi, have you known this
Oh,
person? Sarah Laban? Fale?
hey, Sarah Malo. Little Milo.
So
Okay, okay. Isn't that
yeah.
Lee? Okay, all right, all right, all right.
All right. Malo, malo. So
Thank
yeah.
you, Sheila.
So that's something that I think is kind of interesting there. Let's swing back to the video here, Masi, so you can kind of get caught up on
Okay.
that thing here real quick.
For ceremonies, rituals, but also elite sports. So Pulemelei, across these 1,100 acres, sits right on top of the survey. But I'm really interested in understanding the living system as in its entirety. So the archaeologists have also identified other significant mounds within inside the site. I believe it was 4 or 5 others, and they're splitting up into different Pito or different wards. And each of those Pito or wards had their own systems within inside them. As I had mentioned.
So
Okay.
that's kind of their video there. Any comments on that before we go back and finish our sister's comment here on the Pulemelei Mound itself?
Yeah, I don't believe they're starting on the right foot. So it's probably gonna take them somewhere because if they start from the foot of if like right to what if they say let's just say if it was a Tuitonga settlement, right? Then if they go back to oral history and then they can identify because there were 5 generations of Tuitonga that left Tonga Tapu, really moved its headquarters for some time in Ha'amoa. I think that's a good place because I feel like they're gonna get carried away. In my opinion, they're gonna find a conclusion that's probably not an accurate um, narrative of really what was that compound. That's just me because I feel like they're
Yeah.
starting at the wrong place. But we'll
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
see.
see
And
where they
then
go.
yeah,
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is I agree 100%. If you start wrong, it's very hard to correct yourself down the road, right? But it's
yeah,
possible.
mm,
It's
mm,
possible.
mm,
The other thing too is if they start with or at least be open to the idea that it was Tuitonga, then what doors does that open? If he really wants to understand this compound and how it functions,
mm,
where else did the Tuitonga have a compound?
yeah,
Wallace in Futuna. They can go
yeah,
there. They can now
yeah,
have multiple data points on because that Wallace in Futuna had a wall, like she
yes,
said, it was
yes,
a wall, it was, kilometers long
mm,
and wide. They have sectioned areas within it.
mm-hmm,
So, that could possibly lead to some interesting connections there if they were to try and compare,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
what's happening in the Pulemelei. Now I'm not liking the word Pulemelei anymore. The Paatonga, right? If
Mm.
they could connect the Paatonga to that one in Uvea and Futuna, then that could have an interesting impact there on new information.
No, and I was thinking too. You also covered an episode too on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. With the marae they had in Tahiti. I wouldn't be surprised that maybe that had some affiliation of maybe a Tuitonga when it went to Tahiti, kind of stayed somewhere near to that compound because it sounded like it's a very significant place. You kind of
Yeah,
mentioned that it could have been a place of where the high chief of um, Tahiti gathered all the
tribute.
fruits,
Yeah,
tributes, and maybe took it to the Tongans or whatever. But I'm just saying, the Tuitonga seems like, especially that they probably traveled a lot everywhere. But that 5 generations, especially we have a lot of just oral history from on top of oral history saying, and not only that, but we have also some langis that refer to the names that they were in Ha'amoa during that time. I'm not surprised during that 5 generation that there were some Tuitongas that probably stayed near to that important place in Tahiti. I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of ruins in Tahiti. Then that Patonga Puremelei in Savai. You all brought up Futuna and Welles, Futuna, and Uvea place. So no, there's there, and then when you tie that to all the ruins in Tonga, man, it makes your research a lot easy and
Yeah.
simple. I feel like that
Yeah.
helps to clear a lot of the very difficult narratives or explanations regarding our origin history.
Not 100% agreed. Let's come back to sister. She's still scratching her head. What's going on over here? You guys are talking to me about Pulemelei. Never heard Pulemelei in my life.
Ila leo nga fola na itai poli nga no fua. E famela ni famtala nga tabalo na mai matu. Ole tabalo ni na ba ayale. E fato anga ni ba mai ole. Kame ono fua. Titong.
Mm.
Ai foli nga uma ba na in. Itai pese no fua.
So if you pause it here, Tua, she's saying the guy that she would talk to that was actually in charge, that actually farmed close to this area, what he would tell her is some of those, you see those flat stones that are still on top of that structure.
Mm-hmm.
What he said, that was a sitting, and he said there's various flat stones just on top. Those were areas of the sitting area of the Tuitonga when he would come and sit. And that's what she's saying. And that's what she's saying of a gentleman when she was young, when she was growing up here, that he would farm around this area, and I'm assuming it was his land that he was cultivating, and that was what he knew and
It's been
explained
told
to
probably
kind
for
of,
generations and
yes,
generations
yes.
on
And
what
he's
that
saying these
was.
flat stones were sitting areas of the Tuitonga, and you see them. It's a big compound, so he probably, like you said, there was a lot of functions. He probably had many people staying with him or whatever, so
Yeah.
he would probably move around and sit when he would give orders or whatever. But that's what she was saying right there.
See, I mean, and look, nobody talks about this,
Mm.
right? Nobody talks about this. This to me has all the same red flags of when Tevita Fale said, hey, Polynesians were great navigators. They would go to the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. They would go everywhere. And all the academics would say, hey, can you please be quiet? You're an uneducated savage. Let us, the academics, tell you about your people and your history. And then now, what does everybody say? There was a comment also that also said on our things, you guys need to respect the scientists. They've been so respectful to our history. And I'm like, they just jumped on
Only
greatest only
recent.
now. Yeah. I said, hey, where were you in the 80s and the 90s? Where if you
Even
said
early
that
2000s, even the
even early
early
2000s, yeah. You said that Polynesians were navigators, they would have mocked you like they did so many people.
No, I think they've only jumped on. I'm trying to think too. When was the turning tide? When they jumped on, I think they only did it. When what was that? Was it the Hokudea when they sailed from
Yeah.
Tahiti or Hawaii to Tahiti by that Nainoa Thompson? I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Back in that time, when did that happen? Do you recall what's that year? Because I feel
So
like when they did that, then the scientists were like, oh, okay, everyone, all the scientists and academics, okay, let's all jump. We're all going to throw our money in the hat that they were
they
master
slowly,
navigators.
because that happened in like 80s, 70s, 80s, where
Okay.
it started then that Micronesian guy was teaching that Nainoa Thompson or whatever about the Micronesian navigation knowledge and techniques, right? And then they did that whole thing in the 80s, and then slowly, right, you get
Okay.
probably the Hawaiian academics there, but it was not mainstream, right? And it takes a long time. I mean, you get academics today that say certain things and they get shut down. You get academics who say, like the papers that we read. The only group of power that these academics have found that consolidated power over multiple islands, there's only one example, Tuitonga. That's the only example. And yet those academics are ignored. And what academics are the ones that are being promoted? The ones who who are ignoring this lady's oral history. The ones who are pushing Pulemelei is this, and that, and no discussion on, dude, there was a single nation headed, and the seat of power was on Tonga Tapu. And just like any other monarch or any other, civilization, they had multiple residences throughout the empire.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of interesting there. Let's kind of see what else she says here, and then I got one more video on the Pulemelei Masi kind of discussion, and then we're gonna jump into some other
awesome
comments on social media.
Okay.
No matter my boon, my no to my I met a part to my Malay or by any multi my man, bloody wing or part on my name. I'm Talaga, man. I don't know what say. Why pay Yaman Yatele Tanata yes. No, my appeal my matamata. Mama, I for Illy. Ilma Walunga is our name. Or the name. Tia Isaya, while Uvea for Ima, Mos was away. Nisiva or Sam, Eliasity of a pain, the Mawal. Yeah, all they were Avela Atato Tintio, if I know a Walla or the Tia. Well, what we La Elicia Walla some way.
You can pause it there, too. So like this lady is going back saying there were some people. I didn't know it catch exactly where, but there were some people from Upolu who heard about this Patonga. They came in and came to go look at it, study it. They knew of the name of the Patonga, but they said they didn't really know exactly its purpose, and that's why they were coming to kind of study and kind of learn more about it. Because obviously she's saying she also used the name like Tia, maybe like a Sia, something
Tia.
they used it. Yeah, Sia. So obviously it's very large, very high. So it's a very interesting um, landmark for the ancient world back in those days. So they were coming to study. They came to study these pathways. The kind of camera kind of show these pathways of like climbing up and down this this Tia, which she referred to. But yeah, that's what she said. And she said, I'm just explaining of what the gentleman that used to look after the land that was here. That this is what I was told. But some people who've heard it was the Patonga. They came to kind of study further because they didn't really know exactly what really occurred here. So
yeah.
yeah.
So they came to study it and say, what kind of name can we come up with to change it from Patonga?
I can tell you. I think these guys came and look at it. They called their friends in overseas to say, "Hey, we got some new study, but in order for us to get access to funding, what do you think we should call the name? Maybe 100 grand. We'll call it Pulemelei." He said, "Okay, I'll bring the 100 grand tala to me, and then we'll go with that name, and we'll help you push for that name." I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just thinking out loud.
That's interesting, right? That's
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
Mm.
Let's go back to some comments here real quick. Water Bear says, Samoa saying they are center of Polynesia because they are in the center of Polynesia is pretty small-minded. Yeah, that's the one thing that's funny, right? They say just because they are somewhat in the center of Polynesia and have an island north of them called Tokelau and Tonga called Tonga south of them,
No.
that is
That's their
nobody
definition.
can challenge. Nobody can challenge. So here's another one from Tease. Don't the Mara in Tahiti always reference it for Atea? Even the Hawaiians have ruins called Wakea, same person. Does that stem from Tongan influence? I'm not familiar with it. I do know the Tapu Tapu Atea, right?
Yes, that specific name.
So yes, that specific name, and they tie it to Tangaloa. They say they came there. That's where Tangaloa resided, and they all came there to meet when they were called for sacred events, and to bring tribute. So we take the position. Yes, Tangaloa resided on Tonga Tapu, and that could have been one of the meeting points, like Masi said, the meeting points to meet there to collect the tributes. To go to Tangaloa and then also to the Tuitonga once the Tuitonga took it over. Here's a funny one. Water Bear says the Pulemelei Mounds, right? and that is a reference to the Tuimanua, right? The study that we looked at.
We went over the study. Yep. That was a funny one.
Now here's another interesting thing. They tried to say that people were buried on top of Pulemelei, and we went through the study that shows, there was a wooden post in the middle, and they're, we might find people buried under there. They didn't find anything buried up there. They just say there was a structure built on top, but they didn't find any bodies at the top of that. Hey, here's Brown Monk. Masi.
Oh, what's up, Brown Monk?
What's up, Brown Monk? Actually, go ahead and read this.
All right, so this is what Brown Monk has to say. I spoke with some natives in the Northwest, and they have similar stories to Hawaii. They showed a 1418 Ming Dynasty map showing Turtle Island off the west coast. Interesting. Brown Monk.
And that's the thing is, I think there's a real possibility for this, that we have underestimated what our ancestors, not just the Polynesians, but just humans in general, were able to navigate. Just because the Western civilization didn't know that the world was round and it could be navigated around, the Western civilization is one of the youngest civilizations on Earth, right? Just because they didn't know doesn't mean that many of our ancestors knew these things. Right? Interesting. Masi, we're hoping to have Brown Monk for an interview tomorrow. So Brown Monk's time. We'll schedule a time for that, but we're hoping Brown Monk, he's been gracious and willing to join us for this.
Awesome.
Hey, Polly Prince, Malo, he says Samoan gatekeeping this because we can't understand. Very interesting, right? Have you noticed? Like, nobody brings that up. I've seen them share this video on YouTube, but none of them mention, there's a witness here that local, right from the area, grew up there, who says this is a Tongan structure.
Even when you just take that story from that lady and just say, if you start from there, being a Tonga, because if you think about it, Tonga is just a gated area of like a settlement. That's a much accurate name than saying creating something out of nowhere. Kind of like you brought a good point, Tua. The lapita almost sounds like a lapita, like a mistake, like the Pulemelei, but
exactly.
That's where it's going. But I am surprised with the amount of Samoan academics that I haven't heard any prominent ones that have actually just at least pushed this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some, but some low key ones that I haven't seen yet. But the ones like the prominent ones, I don't know why they're not touching this. I find it interesting.
Yeah, because it's not sexy and it doesn't fit the agenda. Like you're saying, a lot of this is driven by funding, right? And if the majority of academia says this is the storyline we want, and you come up with an interesting, they'll be like, that's interesting. Go find funding somewhere else, right? And so what's the temptation? Don't call it Tonga, call it Pulemelei, so we can get money to do the surveys and do this other stuff. Yeah. Right?
No, and I'm thinking too, if you go with the Tonga, man, I'm telling you, that's a more evidence to say we're a Polynesian nation, a Polynesian empire, the Tuitonga Empire,
100%.
And maybe there's not enough funding to project that narrative. Only there was separate countries, and that's a good one to funnel. That's what they're willing to pay for, to find more evidence to support that idea.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like, this is the other thing that I think is important. People need to understand that. Let me get the put that out of the way. Tongans should not be the only one that are proud that Tonga remained independent through colonization. All of Polynesia needs to be proud of that, because, like you were saying, Masi, it was one nation. It was one people, one nation, one religion, one government, one leader, one civilization. And I can't think of any other significant civilization that can say, not only did we survive colonization, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same ruling family for thousands and thousands of years that is active today. And so this is not something that only quote unquote Tongans should be proud of. All of Polynesia should be
Yeah.
proud of this, right? Because that is evidence that even our civilization at its weakest and its most fractured state survived. A piece of that civilization survived with the same family, the same structure, just adapted to modern day living. And so everyone should take pride in that. That's kind of my thought on that, Masi. I do want to just finish, make sure we don't miss any other golden nuggets from this
Yes.
interview here. But any other thoughts before we go back to the video?
No, I just want to emphasize the importance of a part of Polynesian nation surviving colonization, not being colonized. Because let's just say if that were to happen to the little island nation of the Tonga Empire of the Tonga Islands, man, I'm telling you, the narrative that's been going on with of us being separate and kind of doing our own little thing, that would probably be the dominant narrative, and we wouldn't. You and I probably wouldn't, or even David Tafare wouldn't have the knowledge of what we know now. So that's like
100%.
I'm just saying, like, man, if I think about it, we would just go with whatever everyone say, because at the end of the day, we really didn't know what, because Tonga was saved by the grace of God, and also important works of our ancestors. We're able to share this, which is different, and it's in conflict with many of the Western ideas of what Polynesia was. So I just want to just share that. That's why us surviving that is very important, because I feel like we can provide our idea of really what our ancestors have said of what the old Polynesia uh, nation used to look like.
100%. 100%. All right.
Apa o se o ni ba sol sa longa o tanoi ya ni si i ya tonu ole o se nau ta ina ko ile fia I loa ko le a o se tia o ni
Gee, good pa, quite yeah.
tia o ni
Yeah.
tangata
Definition right there.
tanoi kung tangata tonga kung tangata sa ya ai fa pia o nei me mamala Leo na ta ua fiso apea na sauna le tuanga le tina po tama so ba tuali fo I so ana to mo moli mai ya I no le pe go ele anga fa apea na pi mama pe pa na o ta no e apea nga ne ko ne me fa ma me to fango ya langona fo ito te pai I tua I tato tua a mai ola o ilo ya
Hey, actually, I think she says the same thing too. But what did she say in that? Anything there that?
Well, she's just saying, like, there's this structure here has, she used the word like now, kind of meaning like, um, there's a lot of like push to try to understand this, to really understand if people are buried here. She mentioned, like, if people are buried here, were they like Tongan or Samoan, and it's good that we've discovered this, and hopefully we can, it makes us to look back to understand of our ancestors of the old days. So that's kind of pretty
Hmm,
much what she was just saying.
okay. Let's see here a little bit here, because I think if I remember correctly, this lady kind of grew up in the area and kind of gives the
Mm,
same concept as well.
ile mau ile tia nei e fanta na o fa sa tong se na te tasi o na o kele ia mangaku mamau fa le wa kasu e mo ka fa longo fo ia mau ese ala le tunu ia I mau vai ia o le o ngei le mana ngei anga o se ia vai malai se lupe mo kia se lupe ia ale ali o le akamali o ngei faiku ia maso o mai na ia male malo o liru maiava I kaimia o faikau
Oh, she's mentioning the Mayava.
Yo le sila mau pe maule ko ke le kanga le maule va pe o isa sa o selma lo tutonga e kaimia o ni a o colonizer va ele e konga ia ngele e vai ngai palauli ia sa fa polonga ila kanga kai fauli ia le kia le e fai mo la ko
Okay, so you can pause it there, Tua. So she threw a lot of things there. Everyone in Tonga will be familiar with the what is it, the Heu Lupe, you know, the
Yeah.
pigeon
Sia Heu Lupe.
snary. Sia Hey Lupe. She's using the same thing, that this was kind of like an area too that they would have the games of the Tia Seu Lupe. And
And
she said
remember, there's the little star mounds are found all around the Pulemelei. When they did the survey, they found the main Pulemelei mound, and then multiple, that other video that we saw, that other study, they found the star mounds all around that area.
all around. So she's saying she's heard about that. She brought that that was it Lilo Mayaba saying that he would come here, but then obviously they've said that he's the high chieftain. But she also mentioned that the other story she's heard, that she used the word colonized, but the malo. So malo in Samoan is like pureanga, malo tuitonga, which is the
See?
pureanga tuitonga. She said what she's heard came, colonized this whole area of Palauli, is this whole compound, and he would she said in the way of Bolonga, which is like Popula to the people that lived in this area, because they were under the domain of the Tuitonga during his reign here. And that's what she shared kind of after sharing the pigeon snaring, the Seolupe or Heulupe, and then the little Mailava guy. It seems like, I wonder when the Tuitonga left, when he went back to his residence in Tonga, it seems like that high chief kind of maybe took over the residence of the Tuitonga. That's what it seemed like.
Yes.
She's
Because,
kind of brought up that name.
and that's very interesting because we do know Telea. What was the Telea's brother's name? Urakimata. What was the brother's name who became Lomueki? They were the two brothers. They were the two heirs when Tapu goes, right?
Yes.
And he says, Urakimata pe te usilgiai e tuitonga. So Telea gets there first. Lomueki, I can't remember his name. Was it Fanga One? Was his name?
I think
maybe?
so.
Can't remember.
Yes. Yeah.
He shows up second, even though he's older, but his brother, who showed up first, becomes the Tuitonga. That's where that term Vakatalata comes from, right?
Yeah.
He says now that his father has passed away, he doesn't want to go back to Ha'amoa. He says, I don't want to go back to Ha'amoa anymore because my dad's passed away. I'm going to stay here. So it could have been, like you're saying, the two oldest sons, the two heirs, they both leave. They go back to Tonga Tapu. So all this residence and land is left. So they probably appointed someone to oversee and take care of that since they were moving back to Tonga Tapu.
Yeah, and it could be a political thing. Maybe there were fights over, because taking over that compound only elevates yourself, saying this was the Tuitonga settlement, because it was, it was a very high importance area, let's just say. So
yeah, 100%. So I think we touched this enough. I also want to highlight this. You noticed in that video of the modern day academics, they mentioned the Mayava guy, but do you realize what they don't mention? Tuitonga.
Yes.
They don't mention the Patonga.
None of that. Yes.
None of that.
Yes.
But what do they say? I'm so interested to understand what was the function and purpose of the Pulemelei Mound, but I will deliberately cut out and forget that the locals there say, yes, it was called the Tonga and the Tonga resided here.
Yes.
And yes, the Mayava guy was there, but we also understand, or at least have heard from our ancestors who've lived here for who knows how long, that the Pureanga of the Tonga was here and he resided here. You see how we can't just, you hear these academics and they oh, I'm so interested in learning the truth, but then they'll deliberately ignore certain parts, and they won't even say, hey, let all the ideas compete. One of the things we push here, throw all the ideas into the arena, let the ideas fight it out, and then the best idea is the one we'll believe, and let that be the case.
Yeah, Tua, it reminds me when you use the example, like we get all the ideas stored in there. You ever, I always think of like some of the Tongan functions. You ever been around when you're there to help carry some of the koloa when they present it, and then you hear all the old ladies of how they're gonna set it up, how it should be presented. So they have a little debate on what's the perfect way, and then they all decide which is the better idea, and then one will say, okay, that is better. Oh no, that is the right way. Oh, you're right, that is the right way. And then they all come with their ideas, and then only one will raise up, say, oh, that is the right way. That's how it should be. That's how it should be presented. So I'm just saying, like, hey, when you get more than one way, you throw it inside the soup, and then people will taste it and they'll say which soup is the best one, and it's like, okay, I think you're right, that is the right one. People will fall in line after.
Yes, not 100%. So this next video is a academic, it looks like, talking about the Pulemelei Mound, and I want to stop it at certain parts to talk about when they take the idea of the Pulemelei Mound and the idea of Ha'amoa being the center, and then they mention certain things, but when you stop and you talk about the details, you soon realize even in what they're describing for the Pulemelei points back to Tonga Tapu. And we'll stop as we go through this video to kind of, but if you aren't familiar with the history and the current studies out there, you just assume they're all pointing to Ha'amoa. But let's listen to this real quick.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Crypto Anthropologist, which is my made-up word for the study of civilizations who seem to have disappeared from our normal history books. Last week I made a video about some of what I think are the 7 most interesting megalithic ruins scattered across Micronesia and the Pacific Islands. What's particularly intriguing about the Pacific Island civilizations is that most of them are located thousands of kilometers away from the nearest inhabited islands. Also, many Pacific Island megaliths occurred hundreds of kilometers from where they were built, sometimes even from other islands.
Where's that?
This is
Micronesia somewhere?
Yeah, there's a lot of the Micronesians. What is it called? I forgot the name of the people. They have these big round things that was like a form of currency or something like that. Okay. Now, I want to stop it there because she's going to talk about Pulemelei here pretty soon, right? But she mentions many of these I don't know. Did she say Polynesian or Pacific Island?
Pacific Islands, I heard.
She said Pacific Islands. Okay. But she's going to tie it. She's going to tie it and say, oh, they brought it from hundreds of kilometers away, these large stones. Tell me a Polynesian island that has that story, that they brought it from hundreds of miles away, large stones.
Taha mo nga in the langi Paepae o Telea stories.
There's only one that we know of, right? And a big reason for that is the architecture of large, massive, singular stones are, for the most part, uniquely to the Tu'itonga. We look at the Pulemelei Mound, we look at the fort in Wallace and Futuna, we look at all the maraes throughout the eastern Polynesia. What type of building technique is it? Small stones stacked on each other. Right? That's primarily the architecture and the design. It is only with the Tu'itonga's main residences on Tonga Tapu, you have large stones that weigh, hundreds to possibly thousands of pounds. and there are stories of them being cut of stone. And for example,
Mm.
here is the example we're going to look at. Let's look at this real quick.
Quick question to all. No, I was gonna say to all, because there's two right, there's two stories, and I'm curious on what you think on this, because with the mounds, the stones that were moved to Tonga, were they from Ewa, or are you more thinking it was Uvea or Futuna? Like, because for me personally, I'm kind of leaning towards this gentleman in Uvea and Futuna, because probably it's a lot more detailed in their storytelling than Ewa.
Mhm.
But when we did cover a video of Ewa, and the rocks looks very similar to the rocks of the Ha'amonga and stuff, and the langis all over. But I don't know. What do you think? Because to me, I don't know of any other kind of oral stories that it could be yes or no. But the two top ones are the Uvea and Futuna, cutting them and bringing it to Tonga Tapu and Ewa. But I don't know
Yeah.
what your thoughts on that.
My thought is this: it could be both. To me,
Okay.
the feat of executing both is phenomenal, and I'll give the reasons why. Number one, we only know that the Tongan Kalias were the ones that are described as the largest out of all of them, right?
Mm.
And so the Kalias by far are like the largest versions, right? The Tongyaki
Mm.
and
Lomi
the Lomi
Peau.
Peau, some of these like famous ones. Yes, these are famous ones. And the reason why, to me, Masi, why either option is very possible. The hard part is cutting the stone and getting it onto the boat. Once you get it onto the boat, if the boat can carry it from Ewa to Tonga Tapu, it can carry it from Uvea or anywhere in Polynesia, right? You can get it from anywhere. And Danny was sharing the oral history of how the stones, I don't know if you know, Masi, how the stones were actually put and carried on
No.
and it's actually very interesting because you have the double outrigger, right?
Mm.
The stones were brought in and tied underneath.
Mm.
And this is why I think it's a very ingenious way. Because if you put it on top, not only it's probably more difficult to put it on top, but what does that do to the weight and the stability of the boat? It makes it actually more unstable. But if you put it in the middle, and even if you float it in the water, it alleviates the weight of the stone because the water is, in a way, alleviating some of that weight. And it's a lower center of gravity because it's down in the water. So that's actually the oral history is that's how they were carried. They were tied underneath the bottom in between the two.
One by one moved.
One by one and brought across.
Mm.
And I would assume for the very big ones. But yeah, I mean, to me, the difficult part is getting it on and off and moving it on land to where it needs to be. Coming from construction, even with all the equipment we have today, that is the most high risk, the most difficult portion of building a large structure with large pieces. It's the lifting and placing and moving, even on land. So whether it be Ewa, whether it be Uvea, the distance almost doesn't matter. What matters is the capacity and the capability. And the fact that we all seem to agree that there was the capacity and the capability, that's what matters most. You could, whether it's 100 miles or 1,000 miles, not too big of a difference for me personally.
Okay. Hey, and at the end of the day, it could have been both mixed. Like I said, depending on different areas for different cut of stone. So who knows? Maybe the the ones on the sides are from Uvea and Futuna, and the one on top is from Ewa. I don't know. It could
Exactly.
be
You don't know. It's very possible, right? But here I do want to share this video just so that everyone can kind of see this. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong section. Sorry.
Ko ingoa nau api he ni ko tatakamotonga. Ka ko le hanga no omi au ki he whitu kana e tu usia i koe fumaka ko o atolanga ke hamonga. O kau he matanga i loa ia i Uvea i Waris. Ka koe ni kainga mo me kai koe. Koe fumaka ni o lau pehe kana e. Na tu usia te tui tātui. O whakaheka ko awi ki Tonga ke ngahi a koe ai hamonga. O le utuku kia tangata iki. Au tau mai ni una ma fopena toi Uvea. Koe haamuri ki hamea. Tangata iko ni islahi a he. Moi. Ana koe
And look
ni
how
koe.
close is that to the
Kasi
ocean.
Uvea.
Yeah.
Ka koe. Koe fumaka. Fumaka nai. Ki hamonga. Koe historia a witu. Te te au mai ki haki. Ai koe. Au la peko tahi. Ai hape kari au. Tau kika. Whai nā ngā ue whai nō. Whai koe. Yeah.
So, just for those who don't speak Tongan, he's been saying this gentleman's name is Mulikaamea, right? In their oral history, that's a very Tongan name. Their oral history says that's where the stones that were carved for the Ha'amonga were cut from and carried all the way over to Tonga Tapu for the construction there. So, coming back to that other video and they're going to talk about the Pulemelei Mound. There's just, especially for Polynesia, there's only one real location that really is significant. The Pulemelei Mound was not built out of large stones, unless they find that on the interior, because they say it's been built up multiple times. But as far as we can see from the exterior, they're small stones, just like other areas in Polynesia. That doesn't require, you're not going to go and carry all these small stones hundreds or thousands of miles away when you have so many stones of that same thing in Ha'amoa itself.
Yeah.
All right.
The rocks weighing in excess of 50 tons needed to be transported across the open ocean by boat. Of those 7, some of them were pretty famous, like Easter Island or Nanmadol, while others are not very well known, such as the pyramid in Samoa. In this video,
see, so you all of a sudden you assume, oh, they must have brought all these stones. No, does that look like you need to bring those stones from thousands of miles away?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, didn't we cover the study that most of that stones were just from the source locally,
yes,
just within the area? It wasn't from a different island, which is different from
no,
Tonga, which a lot of their
over
landmarks.
66% of the stone
Correct.
axes came from outside of Tonga.
Correct. Yes.
look at some awesome facts about Pulemelei Mound, also known as the Samoan Pyramid. Standing
So once again, whakaofo shiny. Whakaofo shiny. She says, Pa Tonga, she grew up. That's what everybody says. What does all the academics and the people online say? Pulemelei.
Yeah.
And now even in Ha'amoa, they say, oh, Pulemelei. Well, that seems to be a new word
Yes.
that was brought to that structure.
And that's the thing, Tua, right? Then you get the people who said, see, now you're getting right. We'll see. I don't know if there's been any pushback, but if there's other people like who are like this lady, that's gonna make them marginalized and feel like the story they've heard is incorrect. Because then now you're influenced, maybe the wider people who are outside of, like, let's just say, what's this place, Palauli, this area, they're gonna say, oh, Le Pule Malay, because now because maybe they're not understanding the origin of their history, so they're just gonna go with what the researchers and what they say. So then you kind of
lose
make
that.
You lose that origin of the story, because then now you get the dominant and other Samoans who are outside of this area and saying, no, it's the Pule Malay. See, that's the power of when you don't know, right? When you don't know the origin of the history, and you've been, Samoa was changed to the Germans. You're losing a lot of people who hold the history of this place, and then you only get a very small minority, and they're getting pushed and marginalized because their narrative is not being carried out. So hopefully, and that's the thing, right? And that's the difference with Tonga. There's quite a few of us that still can combat other Tongan academics. They're like, we can still question because we have really strong, concrete evidence of oral stories and also ruins that are still there that we can explain to that can kind of combat some of the Tongan academics when they want to talk about specifically Tongan origin stories kind of thing. So you see how difficult that can be, and that's why you touched upon it, Tua, that thank goodness Tonga survived colonization, because we could have been like this lady here. We're gonna be the very, very small minority, and then change through many different Western governments and whatever, and then we people who don't pass on certain stories. Then you make your story, what you've heard from your ancestors, feel like, "Masi, I think maybe I am. Maybe it was just a good Faikava story somewhere." And yes, you know what I mean. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, Tua, of actually what probably goes on in some of this kind of narrative battle of which one is the correct narrative, because it is a battle of trying to discover our origin. So that's just my thoughts.
100%.
And hey, like we always like to live with everyone with the show, stay curious, ask the right questions and the hard questions. Until next one, everyone. Bye bye.
Sweet. Peace.
Peace.